Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast with Ollie Rafi. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Legal Leaders Podcast channel. My name's Ollie Rafi, and today I had the pleasure of interviewing Colin Levy. He's the general counsel of Malbec, and he's been making huge waves in the legal tech world. He puts out content almost every day talking about legal technology, culture, AI, and adoption around this type of technology. In this episode, he talks about his career progression from when he graduated from Boston College and got his JD all the way up until present day, where he serves as the GC of Malbec and also is an evangelist for the technology and a prolific writer on legal tech. So without further ado, hope you enjoy the episode. Please make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you like the episode. Hey, Colin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you on. I want to jump right into the deep end here. You've built your entire career around sort of pushing the legal industry to embrace technology. You talk a lot about it on LinkedIn. You've wrote books about it. I'm curious why this is your passion. Like, what's your why behind writing about this so much?
Sure. Well, I think for me, it's been about two things. One is I've always loved education and learning. So that's been something that's kind of been very much a driver in my life and something that has always remained a focus of mine. But also, I think it's the second driver has been my experience as a lawyer and seeing the persistent disconnect between reality and the practice of law and feeling like that gap needs to be bridged. And I wanted to try to help bridge that gap to the extent to which I could help doing so. And so I thought, given my interest in technology, my interest in learning, legal tech seems to be the avenue to pursue. And admittedly, I've always had sort of when I was younger, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with tech because at the time it was a little clunky and a little more intimidating, but now I love it and I can't get enough of it. And I've also gone over the fact that, I once feared it because I thought I had to be a programmer to use it or understand it, and you really don't at all, especially these days. So that also, I think, has helped me learn and help others learn, but it's helped plenty of folks overcome their initial kind of built-in fear of technology because of the feeling that they had to be some kind of coder to actually get something out of technology.
Love it. I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite a while, and you put out content like every single day. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's become a bit of just a routine. I just kind of look at things I posted, look at things that I want to talk about. Sometimes it is pretty easy. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. But honestly, if I'm just not feeling it necessarily, I'll probably write about something different, like mental health or not feeling into it, because that's something I'm also passionate about. So there's always something to talk about. But yeah, it's definitely become easier the more often I've done it. But for those who are just trying to start out, I say, don't try to replicate my approach. I would say just do what you're comfortable with. Maybe commenting on a couple people's posts or posting a piece of content, once a week or whatever is most comfortable for you. And kind of you have to start somewhere, and as you start somewhere, use that as a foundation to build off of.
For sure. Appreciate the advice. Let's jump into your career, Colin. Super excited to talk about your path to where you're currently at as general counsel of Malbec, which is a CLM company. So want to take it back all the way to when you're at Boston College getting your JD. I know you're born and raised in Boston, if I'm not mistaken. So take me back to, when you were getting your JD. What did you think you were, going to go into after you graduated?
Yeah, well, so I worked for a big law firm prior to law school in New York as a paralegal in e-discovery. So that gave me my first taste of technology. And then when I started at Boston College Law School, I saw very little being discussed with respect to technology and thought, well, this isn't necessarily surprising. It's also a bit disappointing considering technology is here and its influence is only continuing to grow as we now have learned with the rise of AI. But my experience there was pretty focused on corporate transactions and corporate law because I knew I always wanted to be a corporate lawyer while I was there. I did not want to be a litigator, want nothing to do with litigation. So one can only imagine my um, enjoyment or lack thereof with respect to classes like Civ Pro, which I found just very much not what I was interested in learning about. Contracts, on the other hand, and negotiation and tax were more interesting for a variety of reasons, including the more structured, systematic nature of some of those courses. Um, but even while at law school and seeing this gap between tech and law, I didn't necessarily envision myself becoming sort of a legal tech person. I just saw myself becoming a lawyer and perhaps learning about tech and helping myself by learning some technology tools that can help me be a better lawyer. But as I started practicing, I started realizing, I think I really want to learn more about this technology stuff because I think it will be very helpful for me over the short term, medium term, and long term. And I ended up being right about that. But it really started with just conversations with others who knew more about it than I did and sharing some of those conversations with others once I grew more comfortable doing so.
Incredible. I want to touch on something you talked about. You said you knew you didn't want to be a litigator. It's things are so competitive now. Applications and LSATs and all that kind of stuff is up so much year over year. It seems like when you're applying for these summer jobs or full-time positions, you're expected to know exactly what you want to do, maybe even before you start law school. What are your thoughts on how things are trending?
I think that there is a tendency when you're at law school to be categorized into a certain bucket, and that's for a variety of reasons, including so that sort of law school knows where you fit in, the career services people know where you fit in, so they can best help you. Unfortunately, for a long time, that really has consisted of two primary buckets: corporate, transactional, or litigation. And it's also heavily favored towards law firms, not in house, because traditionally work in house was done only after you'd spent time at a law firm. I did not follow that path. I kind of worked straight in house out of law school, not the easiest path to have chosen, but I also knew I did not want to work for certainly not a big law firm. Um, so I do think that law school tends to historically kind of provide a narrow view of what exists in terms of the labor market. As things have grown more competitive, there also has grown more types of opportunities that exist, i.e., those in legal operations, those in contract admin, those in kind of support type of roles where having a JD is helpful, but you don't necessarily have to be just either a corporate lawyer or a litigator. There are a variety of other options available to you. And I do think that law schools would do well to try to open students' eyes to more of these opportunities rather than leave them to their own devices after they graduate from law school and discover them on their own, as I did, which is a very tough and mentally draining way to go about finding work.
Yeah. And probably the same for AI adoption and technology tools. I mean, it seems like, this is something you see all the time on LinkedIn and all these news articles is about how, maybe law schools aren't necessarily adapting to the needs of the workforce.
So I definitely think that there is a growing number of law schools that are now teaching AI to some degree. But I do think that those remain in the minority. And I definitely think the majority of law schools still are not doing a good enough job of incorporating AI into their law school curriculum. And I think that's the result of a couple of things. First, it's lack of incentive to do so in terms of, well, if we can still continue to feed students into big law firms where they can learn about AI and stuff, why should we bother with it? Because it's not hurting our ranking or our bottom line, really. Two, they often may not have the faculty prepared to teach topics that are more advanced, so to speak, with respect to AI or technology. And number three, I think the students perhaps are not demanding more from their legal education as they should, considering that they're taking out loans and paying a boatload of money to these law schools to learn allegedly how to become a lawyer, when oftentimes what you learn is how the law came to be, but the practice of law is something you learn after you graduate, which to me seems a little bit of a backwards way of learning law and the practice of law, especially if you're paying so much money to attend law school for 3 years.
I agree. It's definitely something that I feel like it's going to change. Hopefully, in the next few years, especially as we see so many layoffs, especially in the tech industry because of AI. I think schools are going to have to adapt. Um,
I hope so. I think we're going to see some of it. I mean, I'm trying to be a part of the, to use a phrase, be a part of the change I want to see, because I'm actually, an adjunct professor at Albany Law School teaching tech to law students. So I figured, I can kind of put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and actually be part of helping make that happen.
for sure. It's awesome to hear, Colin. Let's talk about after you graduated. It sounds like you were, jumped around at a couple of different places before landing in house. Can you tell me about your path to get to Velcro Group Corporation?
Sure. Well, it certainly was an uneven path, because when I graduated, uh, this dates myself a little bit, but I don't care. It was at the tail end of what was called the Great Recession. So employment prospects were fairly bleak, and there weren't a lot of opportunities, particularly ones in the rather crowded legal market of Boston and sort of the Boston area. So I ended up having to take on a large number of temporary roles to just get some work in, develop some of the skills I knew I needed to have to become to practice. And then lo and behold, I got this opportunity with Velcro Group Corporation, which is the company that makes Velcro brand hook and loop products, or Velcro as it's colloquially called. And there, even that job started out as a temp job, and then I got um, offered as a full time role as a contract lawyer, and so I was doing a lot of sort of transactional work for them, and that was a great kind of first taste of in house experience, where I learned a lot of things about myself, including how much there was to learn, how much um, the practice of law in house is very much not what they kind of make you think the practice of law is about when you're in law school. And I also was part of a team that helped to test, create, and test out a kind of fairly rudimentary document kind of review tool for non-disclosure agreements, and that taught me a fair amount about product development, as well as about just technology and making it work and how to create it as well. So learned a lot during the time I was there, but it definitely was a very much of an eye-opening experience for me, concerning, I'll freely admit, when I graduated from law school, I didn't know what the hell I was doing as a lawyer. I feel like a lot of people fall into that category, and they just learn as they go.
For sure. That's awesome to hear. And you were promoted there as well. Can you talk about what that promotion looked like?
Yeah, I mean, the promotion was just, I think, reflective of my loyalty and my work there, and the fact that I was learning as I was there. So it was a nice experience, but like I said, it was a very challenging experience, because it was my first kind of my time there was my first time as, okay, you're a lawyer, people are relying on you, they're trusting what you're saying, you gotta have your stuff together.
For sure. And I read that you were closing deals, some in excess of $300,000. So, what kind of teams were you working with internally? Obviously, I'd say the sales team, maybe the finance team.
Yeah, I was working with all a variety of teams, a lot of different sales teams, a lot of different sectors, and working with finance as well. And I don't remember every single team I was kind of supporting, but it was a large number of teams. And as if that wasn't enough, I also was assisting with a fair amount of corporate governance work, because the uh, company was a fairly complex one with a lot of different international entities that needed to be uh, managed and maintained properly, which was a fair amount of work.
That's awesome to hear. And you were there for about a year and a half. So, and then you went to CW Services and you worked there for a few months. So I'm curious why you left from Velcro Group.
Yeah, that's a interesting question. I kind of took a mental health break because it just was a challenging experience, and I needed to take care of myself because it was such a learning experience and a challenging experience. Admittedly, one I wasn't probably fully prepared for. So I need to give myself some time to kind of refocus. So that's why I took some time off and then kind of re-entered the legal industry through that job with CNW Services, which was a kind of a temporary fill-in role, but was a great experience nevertheless. And I kind of got my groove back, but I needed some time to take care of myself.
Makes sense. And I mean, as you were coming back from the mental health break, what was your like strategy or methodology to look for new roles? Like for folks that maybe they're in the beginning or middle of their career and they know they want to make that transition, like how were you leveraging your network? Were you cold applying? What sorts of things were you doing?
So I was just starting to build my network at that time, and I really kind of just started looking at sort of, I knew I wanted to continue on doing corporate transactions, and I knew I needed to get that experience. But I also knew that I was growing more and more interested in technology, so I wanted to figure out how best to kind of balance those interests and get the experience that I wanted.
Gotcha. Nice. And then you ended up at Pearson, and you were also in a negotiations manager role there. What was it like at Pearson? I know Pearson's probably a much bigger company. So what was your day to day like?
Boy, you're really testing my memory here. Well, it was. I love my experience at Pearson. It was definitely a huge organization. I was going through quite a number of different changes. So I'd say that one of my biggest kind of experiences there was learning how to adapt really quickly to different business demands and changes that were occurring as the company was moving towards becoming a more digital, software oriented company as opposed to a more traditional print publisher. And the types of work I was doing involved kind of a lot of what I've been doing before, contract negotiations, but with a bit more of a focus on intellectual property, licensing content, different types of content, working with different teams to help support what they're trying to do, and kind of really straddling sort of the business and legal worlds there, which was a lot of fun. So it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed my time there. And I met a number of really remarkable people, including someone who has since become a friend, as well as a mentor of mine who at the time was the general counsel of Pearson, and then has moved on to other GC roles.
That's incredible. And at what point in your career did you start like thinking about building your brand and really starting to write about technology tools in the legal world?
Probably started while I was at Pearson. It kind of started there, exploring it, and then my friend and mentor really encouraged me to continue pursuing it. So that's what I ended up doing, and I'd say that is really what kind of got me going on this journey.
When did you write your first book about it?
So that book didn't happen until a couple years ago, actually.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I saw your book on Amazon. It had like 85 plus reviews, like 5 stars, like really highly rated. That was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, the reception was definitely very positive, which was nice to see, considering it was my first book. It was a lot more work than I imagined it was going to be, and it was a lot of fun. But writing for me has always been something I've long enjoyed doing and found really kind of rewarding, both personally as well as professionally.
Amazing. And let's talk sort of more about like your more recent roles. I know you worked at Lookout and Wordrake. I won't like what was your sort of path to getting the role at Malbec, which you've now been there for almost 4 years. Congratulations! Recently promoted to general counsel. So like I I I I don't want to say like you jumped around a lot, but you did, sort of work at a lot of
It's
different
fair to say that
companies.
I did jump around a fair amount. It was part of it was due to just opportunities that arose. Part of it was me kind of really figuring out finding my way, and part of it was just involving growing my network. But ultimately, it was all, I think, a part of building the foundation to where I am now. And now I am, GC of Malbec, and I think that I got the role I have here as a result of the network that I built and the brand that I was building through my time at various companies, and not just through the time I was at these companies, but building my brand, but also actually really showing what I was capable of while I was at these roles. So I think the combination of those two things really led to me getting my role with Malbec, which honestly I couldn't be happier with.
And how big is your legal team?
It is just me, so it's as big as I am.
That's incredible. I mean, and like, how big is Malbec in terms of full time employees?
That is a good question. I'd say we are um, over 100, I think. I
Nice.
don't actually know all the exact number, but we're growing and expanding, and and it's just a fun place to be and doing work that I really enjoy doing.
You have a lot of different responsibilities. I mean, you're working internally with folks. You're also writing content. You're obviously a GC. I'm sure you're working with external counsel. How are you balancing everything?
I think I just kind of triage and kind of figure out what the priority is of each day, and I also kind of have a fair degree of autonomy. They kind of let me do what I want to do at whatever time that's in support of Malbec's priorities. So it works out pretty well. And again, it just kind of every day is a little bit different.
How do you work with outside counsel? Do you have like a go to firm, or is there like a handful that you work with?
It's probably a small number, and it's really for pretty specialized purposes that relate to things to which I'm not necessarily an expert in. Could be patents or trademarks or other or sort of more complex corporate actions. Just really depends. But I make it very clear to everyone at Molbeck that while I'm GC, I am not an expert in all areas of law, which is something I think most lawyers have to kind of educate their friends, family, and others they work with on, because there often is a tendency of others to think that once you graduate from law school and become a licensed attorney, that suddenly you just know everything about every area of law, which is definitely not the case.
For sure. Yeah, it's really interesting that you're doing so many different types of things in your role. You've written a little bit about how to sell into general counsels, and I think it's interesting that you as a GC are probably being sold to, and I'm sure you're obviously promoting the Malbec brand and indirectly and directly selling maybe with your sales team and in many other different ways. Can you speak a little bit about what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a part of my role is helping to educate others that are in a similar role that I have about how they can bring more value to the role through how they work, through the tools they use, through building their brand, building relationships with others, all basically the things that I've been doing to help kind of build my brand and grow my community and support others. And so I really, feel like I, have a duty to give back to those that have supported me and helped me along the way. And so one of the ways I aim to do that is through helping other GCs um, find their way, whether it is finding the right tech, whether it is learning how to kind of build better relationships with internal folks that they work with, or even with external folks that they work with or want to get to know better. And that's something I really love to do. And it's something that I find very rewarding because I get to learn about others, and they get to learn about me. And as far as I'm concerned, relationship building is a key part of long-term success in the business world as well as in the personal world.
On that note, I know you post a lot of content. Are there people that push back on you like consistently, or like as people say these days, do you have any ops or people that don't like your content, and if so, how do you deal with that?
Um, to be honest with you, most comments I get are supportive. If there are some who on occasion will offer some criticism, but usually it's very constructive and actually very helpful, and I welcome that. I very much do. I think it's better to welcome constructive criticism rather than become defensive, which is something I've learned over time. But I also, on occasion, have yes encountered folks who have been just outright less than friendly, and sometimes some of that is amusing to me, and some of it is just obnoxious and not worth responding to. So it
Yeah.
kind of it's very much a context driven kind of type of situation. I remember earlier on in my career, I was posting something, and a law student somewhere kind of thought I was bought out by the legal tech industry, and I was like, if only that were the case. Only that were the case. And it was definitely not, and it was clear that this person was writing it out of fear of technology taking their job, and this was before AI existed. So I get it, but I also try to be very real and honest and transparent about what I'm doing, what I believe in, so that people know that what I say online is something that I would tell anyone right off the street, having just met them.
Yeah, you write a lot about how you pride yourself on being blunt and that sort of a thing. Off the top of your head, what's your most controversial take on this on legal technology?
Uh, I'm not sure this is really controversial, but I think that there's so much noise and so much hype and so many buzzwords, and it's just completely useless and makes my job harder, makes other people's jobs harder. And so that drives me nuts. Um, there also sometimes are some folks who have somewhat of an ego, and it's pretty apparent that they have a pretty big ego, and that also drives me nuts because I just don't think it's like, who are you trying to prove? What are you trying to prove? I don't care. It doesn't impress me. To quote Shania Twain, that don't impress me much. It's just really kind of, I just find it just annoying and amusing in some ways. I honestly don't get it, but it definitely seems like there are some folks who have a chip on their shoulder trying to prove something. To
Yeah,
whom, I have no idea.
on your first note, I saw you post about how you say every week I see another AI powered legal assistant or revolutionary contract intelligence platform. Don't call your document review a tool an AI lawyer. I'm curious about like just to double click on why you like what you meant by that in terms of like is that what you mean when you say like these buzzwords are just kind of being thrown around like crazy?
Yes, partly. And sometimes I'll even talk to my marketing people about, why are you saying this? You're feeding into exactly the type of thing that I'm not a fan of. Um, and I think it's a little arguably misleading. I also think that it's just not all that alluring or attractive because the word revolutionize, the word AI powered, like AI isn't powering anything. There's no literal power coming from AI that's powering anything. It's augmenting and kind of improving things, yes, but I just think it's just very buzzwordy and not particularly helpful because I'm more interested in specifics and details than I am in generic statements. At the same time, I understand that for better or for worse, there are a fair number of people who are kind of attracted to buzzwords, and I just think that those people need to learn a little bit better about themselves and about the industry so that they're not falling trapped to sort of shiny tech syndrome, where they, see a buzzword and think, oh, got to go with them because they're using the words I'm looking for. Um, and AI powered and revolutionary or revolutionize are probably the two biggest sort of heavy hitters, I would say, in that context. And I refuse to support those kinds of um, that kind of marketing stuff. And admittedly, look, every marketing team uses those words because again, they do attract views, but I try to not contribute to that trend.
I think that speaks to like both you and your company's culture. I was reading about Malbec and the 120% customer retention rate, 96% customer satisfaction rating, which is huge in a world where there's so much churn with all of these tools, software tools, B2B software tools, or what have you. So I want to sort of transition and talk about culture. You write a lot about how that's in a lot of cases one of the biggest like bottlenecks or stoppers to adopting legal technology. Maybe you can speak to the culture at your own company, and then speak to some of the biggest roadblocks you've seen externally.
Yeah, one thing I love about the culture here is the fact that it is a very um, transparent, honest culture. So we kind of happily tell a prospect, we're capable of this, we're not capable of that. You know, here's what we can do. Here's something we could do. Here's something we can't do. Because it's important for us for there to be, those clients we work with. It's really important that they feel like we know them, they know us, and that it's a two-way street, and they're being supported the way they want to be supported, and have the capabilities we know we can provide. Um, so that's something I really appreciate. And we're all here for one another and very supportive of one another, which is also super important to me. And in terms of supporting others, you know, we just really try to, frankly, just not pretend to be more than we are. And I think that's important, and that's helps build trust, which is something that is super important to have, and takes a lot of time to build, and not a lot of time to destroy if you're not careful.
Especially in this day and age, like you're saying, like everything truly is like AI powered and just has so many capabilities. And yeah, I think there's a lot of value in like what you're saying, where like to keep, for lack of a better term, you keep it as real as possible with customers and clients. So that's pretty awesome to hear.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's something that attracted me to Malbec. It's something that I myself kind of operate by. I'm not very shy with how I feel about things, for better or for worse. Uh, and I think people, appreciate it. But yeah, I think that finding that right fit is super important and very difficult to do sometimes.
What's the biggest change you think is going to happen in the in-house world, in the legal environment, with all these changes in technology?
Sorry, can
That's
you repeat the question?
Yeah. What's like the biggest change that you foresee in, let's say, the next 1 to 5 years with all the changes happening with technology, whether it's with AI or without?
Yeah, I think it's going to be figuring out how to collaborate with and not compete with AI. I think it's going to be figuring out how to have AI be something that is here to help you and augment how you work without thinking about it in terms of me versus AI or an us versus them mentality. Because there are things AI is good at, there are things AI isn't good at, there are things humans are good at, and there are things humans aren't good at. So I do think there's going to be a bit of a kind of a balancing act that's going to need to take place over the next 1 to 5 years as AI continues to evolve. Because I was talking about this the other day that AI is as bad as it's ever going to be right now. So we need to keep that in mind. And to that point, we have to understand AI in terms of history, and look at it as kind of where the internet once was. When the internet first came out, as we know it, it was okay. It was clunky, but it was groundbreaking, and that's where AI is right now. And it's only going to get better from here, and likely faster than the internet did.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the biggest things you hear from folks that are like, they're resistant to AI. They're like, well, it's not that good, or it hallucinates too much. But people don't necessarily always realize that it's literally changing day by day, week by week. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's kind of a matter of setting expectations. You can't expect AI to be perfect when it's created by humans who are inherently imperfect. Number one, and number two, um, AI is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all problems, so you can't think about it in those terms. Um, it's like thinking about technology as a solution to all problems. It isn't. It can help solve some problems. It can perhaps help you get closer to a solution, but it's not always going to completely solve a problem you have, because humans are complex. They're emotionally driven sometimes, they're irrational sometimes, they're unpredictable sometimes, and those are all things that technology sometimes has a difficult time with.
For sure. Just this kind of random, but have you experimented with? Have you ever been in a Waymo, the driverless cars?
I have not. We don't have a lot of them here. Um, there are a lot in California. I have not been in one. I'm perfectly willing to give it a try. I don't really have a strong opinion about it one way or the other. I mean, people are very kind of enamored with it. Good on them, but to me, it's just kind of okay. You know, great if it can get me from A to B safely and quickly. Fine, I'll go for it. But honestly, it's not like I said. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other about it. But definitely, I've seen people use it and share it online on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, and it's like, okay, good for you.
It's like a major tourist attraction in San Francisco now. I feel like people are like super impressed and surprised by it.
It's like, the technology itself is not exactly brand new. Number one, and number two, it's not flying. It's on a
Not
road.
yet.
Yeah. So tourists, can be tourists. Speaking of tourism, I'm far more interested in going to like one of those wonderfully advanced uh, vending machines that they have in Japan that offer all sorts of different things. That I'm more interested in
Yeah,
than going in, a self-driving car.
that's fair. That's fair. Awesome, Colin. Well, I'll just wrap up with one final question. I want to ask you one final question, and then I'll open it up to you. And you've had sort of a really successful career, and you've worked at a lot of different places. Just broadly speaking, what's one piece of advice you'd give to folks that are graduating from law school and entering the workforce right now as it pertains to legal technology?
I would say, if you are interested in a certain space, find people who work in that space and start building relationships with those people. And what I mean by that is not going to them and saying, hey, can you get me a job? But going to them and saying, hey, can you tell me about your career? Can you tell me how you got to where you are? Can you tell me a little bit about what you do? People like to talk about what they do often. And B, the way to build a relationship is to listen more and talk less.
Which is, yeah, you write about that a lot, which is kind of a trend in the legal industry.
I just think that too often, too many people just talk too much and don't listen enough, and that's something that is very much has historically been a problem in the legal industry. I think.
For sure. And I'll just open it up to you. Is there anything you want to talk about, like Malbec or any of the stuff that you're working on that you want to talk about?
Um, all I would say is, Malbec is working on a number of really cool things that are being augmented by AI. So I think that would be very much something to explore if you're interested in learning more about Malbec. You can go to our website, malbec.io. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, colinslevy.com. That's COLINSLEVY.com. Or find me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in my book, The Legal Tech Ecosystem, that is available on Amazon worldwide.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Colin. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast and really learned a lot from the conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity.